basically today we'll talk about the structure of the presentation, exactly what you're going to be talking about. We'll talk about the dress code and what you need to wear. We'll talk about how you're going to be evaluated or assessed in this presentation, and some of the other details like what you're going to hand in at that point and those kinds of things, okay? So we'll go through a series of these things. I'll also give you some examples to help you maybe think along, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll feel like you kind of know how to get started in preparing and you know how to move forward. So first of all, the presentation dates are April the 18th, the date, one date. It's a day 2 and it's a Thursday, and it's from 2 to 3 p.m. typically. You need to understand that depending on technology, we may go past 3 o'clock. So you have to make sure that you are not having to rush out of here after those presentations, okay? So if you look at the calendar, this is really helpful to visualize timing. You see that we come back from spring break on April the 1st is the first day back, and the presentations are on the 18th, so it's about 2.5 weeks before the presentations when we return, okay? Also, the evening of one of the plays, the shows, so make sure you go see the play as well, so prepare beforehand so that you can come to the school play. All right, it is here at Moscrop in all of the classrooms, so every single classroom will be used, and you will be assigned to a specific classroom with a specific teacher, and I will tell you who that is when we come back from spring break and we've done all of I've gathered all the information from you that I need. I will post it on the Moscrop website. I will put it through the app, and I will also email it to you guys, for those of you who I have email addresses for, so that you have that information. And the audience will be made up of at least one teacher, 3 other grade 12 students who you will be able to hear their presentations and celebrate with them and what they've done. Possibly a community member, so there might be a member of the community who comes in to watch as well. They're interested in celebrating with you. They're also interested in the capstone process itself because it's a new process. And there are about 4 grade 11 students who will be in your classroom as well. Those grade 11 students are being able to see what the presentations are about so that they can start preparing for their presentations next year, okay? So you are also encouraged to invite anybody who you would like to come to celebrate with you. So this might be your mentor if they are available. It might be a family member or a supporter, somebody who supported you through the year, or your capstone, to celebrate with you, because ultimately that's what it is. And it's about 8 to 15 people potentially that are in the audience. Last year the audience consisted of 5 people, 5 or 6. And when I talked about this throughout the year with the grade 12s, they had panic attacks and they were so nervous. I don't know how many people do I have to present in front of? And the day of the presentations, everyone was all dressed up. They were so prepared and excited for their presentations. When they walked into the classroom and they saw 5 people sitting there, they were like, Mrs. Detto, that is not enough people. Like, I've got stuff to say here and I want more people to listen to it. So they were excited. Believe it or not, they were excited about it, and the audience wasn't big enough in their mind at that point. So hopefully you'll feel the same way when you get to that point, because you will be prepared. Right now, you're probably feeling overwhelmed and busy and detached from what you're going to be doing right now, so that you're not exactly excited yet. Hopefully that will change. Any of you working in partners or groups, yes, we know we have some people like that. You need to know that you will be presenting on your own. So you're not presenting in your group or with your partnership, so keep that in mind, okay? Each presentation is going to be about 5 to 7 minutes long, and I'm kind of leaning away from saying the 5 minutes because nobody's going to be able to cover what you need to cover in 5 minutes. But 7 minutes is not a long time, and you do have a lot of things to cover in that time, so you have to really work on being succinct. 3 minutes for questioning afterwards, so the audience can ask you some questions to elaborate on what you've talked about. Altogether, it's about a 10-minute presentation, okay? And then in between that, so when you're done your presentation, you sit down, the teacher does the assessment, everybody does a feedback form for you, and the next person sets up and gets ready to do their presentation. You're evaluated based on a proficiency scale. So this is the rubric where you get some feedback. You'll notice that there's an arrow and it's pointing that way. That's where you want to get to. This is the exceeding. So by reading the language here, you understand how you can go above and beyond to meet the expectations of this presentation. Most people will probably land in this area, in the proficient area, which is great. And if you want to exceed, this is what it's going to look like. The language is only on the outside of the rubric on purpose. You can see from the minimally meet and then the exceeding, and then you can just, what goes in between. And so you can fill anywhere on this line basically. And I'll go through what the things are that we're looking at. But basically what we're looking for here is professionalism, delivery of your presentation, the creativity aspect, the post-graduation goals and the rationale for those goals, your capstone, which means is your capstone good? Did you pick a good topic? But are you able to articulate what you chose to do and how you did it? That's what the capstone assessment's about. And then the quality of reflection. How deeply are you able to reflect and assess what it is that you learned along the way? So that's kind of what we're looking at. So it is mandatory for graduation, as are all of the modules in graduation transitions this year. If you don't have a 1 or 2, which I don't think that applies to any of you, you won't get a presentation. So if you do know somebody like that, make sure they come and see me, because I want to make sure they are up to date. Otherwise, ultimately, if you don't do those things, you don't graduate. I want everybody to graduate, so I'll support everybody through as best that I can. But I need them to come see me. So first of all, you're going to arrange to be here on the day of the presentation. So anybody in a district program? Anybody work an after-school job? So you need to make sure that you arrange with your boss or supervisor that on this day, you don't have to be there, probably until 5 o'clock just to be safe, right? So you want to make sure you arrange your work schedule ahead of time. If you have any other alternate schedules, you do what you need to do to make sure that you're here on that date. Look, I created a Bitmoji. So see me if you have any conflicts and you need any help, okay? I'm super proud of myself for being able to do that. All right, so the requirements of the presentation are that you have some visual aids, but visual aids don't necessarily mean that you're doing what I'm doing, right? Where I've got a PowerPoint presentation, I'm going slide by slide and I'm talking to each of the slides. Don't do that, because presentation after presentation like that in a row gets kind of drab. Be creative. Use your visual aids as just that, enhancements of your presentation, not the entire presentation. So, you could also use pictocharts to be a little bit more creative. There are also Prezi presentations that you could do to be a bit more creative. You could use a trifold board if you want to create something visual that's not technological. That's totally fine. You could embed videos or create part of it as a video. You might do a PowerPoint, which is fine as well, but like I said, I suggest you not do a slide-by-slide talking to PowerPoint, but just use it as a place to put videos and pictures to enhance what you're saying. Posters, flip charts, you name it, you could probably do it. A visual can also include a performance of some sort. So you don't have to have technology or pictures or anything. If it's a performance piece like some kind of a spoken word or a poem or a story, those are considered part of the visual aspect of your presentation as well. Also, if you're thinking, like, I have a student who's doing welding with metalwork and he's not doing any technology, he's going to bring in some physical pictures, and he's also going to bring in the examples of the things that he's welded and created. So if you decide to do a PowerPoint, I urge you to watch this video. It's called Death by PowerPoint, and it will give you some tips and tricks on how not to kill your audience with PowerPoint. So the final representation of learning in your capstones, remember you create that final piece. Essentially, it highlights your capstone learning. So what are you learning in this whole process? That final piece is going to represent that. I'm going to give you some examples of different things that might help you decide what you're going to create for that final piece, or what you're going to show for that final piece. But let's start with talking about what to bring. So apart from bringing yourself in your presentation, you're going to hand in a couple things. You're going to hand in a resume, the finished action log, the mentor guide. You're also going to bring an artifact or a piece of evidence that you're going to show. You're not going to hand this in, but you're going to show us this. And this is new to you guys, but this is something else that represents who you are or something that you're proud of. So in your capstone, you may have focused on something completely different from what you normally focus on. And so we want to give you the ability to share something else about you that you're proud of. So for example, if I have a technologically inclined student who's doing their capstone on building muscle for fitness, I want them to be able to show the app that they had created that they're really proud of, and those skills as well. I'll give you lots of examples to get you thinking about what that might be for you. And then the last thing you're bringing, of course, is the final representation piece for your capstone. So why are we doing this presentation? Well, you know, there's many reasons why this presentation is very beneficial, but one of the main things I think when we're connecting this to why we do things in life is the experience. The experience of being able to stand up in front of people and talk about yourself confidently and reflect on learning. Ultimately, we know that in the future, occupations and jobs are changing. We know that the gig economy is changing the way that we do things, and automation and technology are changing the way that we do things, and ultimately we're preparing for that in saying that you're building a set of skills, and with those skills you're going to have to market yourself to different industries in order to obtain work. So that's essentially it, is your ability to market yourself, to talk about yourself confidently, and that's what you're practicing here, so you're preparing for that, amongst other things. And of course, this is your safe and encouraging environment that you get to do that in. So right now, I'll just lay it all out there. I'm going to say, as long as you do the presentation, ain't nobody going to fail. Okay? You're all going to pass. I can tell you that now. If you don't show up, or you show up and you have nothing to say, then you'll fail. But otherwise, if you're there and you're ready, you're going to pass. So if that was a worry, let it go. It's not a worry. But let's talk about the structure of the presentation and what is that going to look like. What are you going to talk about? So the handout that you have, the short one, is tells you the basics of what's necessary, but on the back, it breaks down the content, talking points, and structure in the middle part there. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. Starting off with, when you start your presentation, you're going to give us an overview of who you are. After that, you're going to talk about that piece of evidence you brought in of that thing that you're proud of, and I'll give you examples for what you can do. Then you're going to talk about your post-graduation goals. So this includes future options, includes next year. You've already done this in your transition plan. Maybe it's changed a little bit, that's fine, but that's kind of what you're talking about. And then you're going to synthesize your capstone journey. And lastly, you're going to reflect what you learned. Okay? So that is the basic structure of the presentation. Now I'm going to go through each of those things in detail and give you guys examples of what you can talk about, how you might approach it, etc. So, talk about who you are. A good way to approach that is by thinking back to who you were as a grade 8 student, right? So you get me laughing, it will be very different from now. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about what you were like walking into, if you were here in grade 8 or wherever, whatever high school, what were you like walking into that building in grade 8? Were you shy? Were you outgoing? Were you nervous? Were you connected? Were you disconnected? Were you really interested in art and maybe now you're more interested in science, or vice versa? If you take a moment and think about that, you go, oh, okay, yeah. You've changed, you've all changed, but we don't always sit and think about how we're changing because we just let change happen, right? If you think of yourself as this digital line, so this, you got the mouse and you're on the computer screen, you've got a digital line, the digital line is going straight, and then in your life, this kind of things happens where this line goes jag, jet, jag, jet. So think about what are those things in your life that are making that line kind of change directions. What are the significant experiences that have happened to you that have redirected where you're going? So that's what I want you to connect with and identify with. What are those things and how have you become the person that you have become? So that's a good way to approach the first part of it. Things that you talk about, you're going to actually paint that picture in 1 minute. So it's not a lot of time. So really the exercise here is about being succinct and pulling out the most important things that you want to talk about. So you could talk about anything that's important to who you are. So maybe that's where you come from, your background story. Maybe it's something to do with how your graduation year is going so far. Maybe it's not going so well, or maybe it's going better than you thought it was going, or maybe there's ups and downs throughout it. Maybe you are reflecting on your last few years of high school, like I said, and how you've grown, taking it from that aspect of who was I in grade 8 and who am I now. What significant things have contributed to who you are today? What are your interests, your hobbies? What are you passionate about? What are the activities you take part in or the sports that you play, inside or outside of school? And throughout this talk, you can be showing pictures or share some visuals of any of the things that you're talking about to help people visualize what it is. So, introduction of yourself, about 1 minute long. If you just thought of something important that you think that you want to talk about, can you make sure that you write it down? Because if you don't, you're going to forget, and then you're just going to do double the work. You're going to go home in a week or so and sit down and try and think about it again and go, oh, I know I thought of something, but I can't remember what that was. So I encourage you to be taking notes as I'm talking and writing these things down. I did have a pile of pencils in the middle of the table. Did they disappear?
No,
they're over there? Okay, yeah, great. Perfect. If you need to borrow a pencil, there's one over there.
Can I go to the washroom?
Oh, yeah. All right, and so the other thing I asked you guys to think about is, what are you going to bring? So what is that one thing that you can choose to bring that is going to be a piece of evidence or an artifact of describing who you are, or what you're proud of, or accomplishments, or a challenge that you've overcome, any of those kinds of things. Could be something that represents your future, perhaps. And you're going to talk about a few things. Why you're proud of this. Why did you choose this item over anything else to bring? Why is this so important? What skills does this show you have? So here are some examples. These are things that people have brought in the past. And you can see they're very different. So a bike wheel, a robot, a diorama, a mousetrap, a wig. I just don't know I can't remember what the significance of some of these things were, but really there's kind of no right or no wrong. So as we're brainstorming, if you think of a few ideas, make sure you write them down. So it could be a personal memento, like a souvenir, or a photograph, a video, maybe it's a trophy that you received, or a piece of clothing from something that you are part of, or that represents something that you have accomplished. Maybe there are items that are really important to who you are, like your instrument, or your skateboard, or your guitar, or your basketball or soccer ball, or a netball. Your grandma's scarf, because she taught you something, and that scarf represents something. Anything that represents your skills, your talents, your passions. It can be any of those kinds of things. Maybe it's something academic or school related. So maybe it's the essay that you wrote, or the poem. Maybe it is the book that really made you think about life differently. Or it could be the school project or report card that shows growth. So remember, when we show a report card to signify something that we're proud of, we're not just saying, like, we're not just looking for somebody to say, look, I've got an A in this. Like, you might have had to work really hard at a math course, and last year you got a C, and this year you vowed you would work so hard you would bring that up, and you got a B this year. Showing that difference is amazing. So we're not just looking for A's, we're looking for improvements and success in your own personal life. Excuse me. Maybe it's an art piece, or a music composition, or a robot. Or you could do something that's future goal related. So maybe you've got that acceptance letter to that university you were trying to get into so badly. Maybe that's what you want to bring because you're so proud of that. Or it could be an artifact that kind of represents the career that you're really passionate about pursuing. So for example, you have that drafting project that you completed in drafting class that signifies your interest in becoming an architect, and that's what you want to bring. It really could be pretty much anything, as long as it's important to you. Here are some more examples of things brought in the past. Awards, Dreamcatcher signifying a cultural thing, art, a rugby ball that's been signed, art school project, a difficult piece of music. But I will say, bringing the physical, League of Legends cards, bringing the physical thing in is more powerful than just talking about it and showing a picture. So where possible, bring that physical thing in. And where possible, doing a demonstration of it or showing it is also more powerful. So here's an example of somebody with a talent. Let's just pretend she was older, because when you show things, you want it to be of you more recently rather than when you were like 7 or 10 or whatever. But look at how cute this girl is on Britain's Got Talent. She comes in to show her talent there. I'm going to show you a little bit of it here. She's just like, everyone's like, oh, she's precious. You remember this? I don't have the sound on, so I'm going to turn the sound on.
It's at max volume.
It is at max volume. I will turn it down if it's too loud.
There's
Australia.
Look
My
at her,
mommy is
so
home
cute.
looking after my 2 younger sisters.
Okay,
Go.
good luck.
Thank you.
Just so cute.
Dinky little thing.
That you wouldn't want to be on this
You'll find it scary.
She's still, she just killed 40 samurai, let me tell you. So I could have come into my presentation, I could have said, so I'm a sword fighter, I'm trained in sword fighting, and I've been doing that since I was 5 years old. Or I could come in and talk about it and show this and be like, wow, people can see that. So showing things is more powerful than talking about it as well, okay? So that gives you some idea of how maybe you could do that. And if you thought of something, make sure that you write it down. All right, any questions about the artifact or the piece of evidence that you need to bring in? Great question. It does not have to have anything to do with your capstone at all. It is an opportunity for you to showcase something else, but if it still is similar to your capstone or along the same lines of it, that's fine too. It's up to you and what's important to you to show. So then after we've talked about who we are, we've shown this piece of evidence as something that we're proud of, we're going to talk about our future plans and the first year after high school. So you've done this in your transition plan. What are the education, work, volunteer, career goals, and options? And notice how and options is big. Because we, by no respect, expect you to walk into this presentation saying, I 100% am going to be an architect. That's not what we're looking for, and that's not what we're judging as being the successful post-graduation plan. We're looking to hear about your options. You guys are young, you haven't experienced life yet. We know that these decisions don't get made like that. Sometimes you do feel like there's a career that you really want to pursue. Great, that's great too, but one is not better than the other. So for example, you might come in saying, you know, I'm really interested in science and math, and I'm really skilled at science and math, and so I'm trying to pursue a career involving those two things. So for example, I've looked at perhaps being an architect or an engineer or a blah, 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 blah. So it's about giving the options of the things that you've thought about. We want to see that you've done some research and you know a few of your options, and you have a rationale for why you are thinking of those things in the future. And maybe you don't even have any careers in mind yet. That's okay too, but you have to have a plan for where you're going to begin looking and what areas you want to begin looking at. So what are the details for next year? You did that in your transition plan. If it's changed, that's okay, but that was the preparation for talking about this piece, so you just talk about what's changed there. What are you exploring? Remember that we're not also looking for everybody to say they're going to university. That's also not the standard that we're looking for. Everyone is going to take a different pathway, and all pathways are equally as powerful. So there's trades, there's colleges, there are universities, there's community schools, technical schools, vocational schools. Many people will take many different pathways. You might take a gap year next year where you decide to work and make money, equally as powerful as going to school, learning about yourself, learning about the world. You might be volunteering and traveling. Great. I urge everybody to travel. Travel, travel, travel as much as you can. Maybe you're doing it all, or you plan to do it all. I'm gonna look at you, you might plan to do it all. So, no matter what your plans are, just know that you need to be able to articulate and be proud of that and share why it makes sense to you. So don't feel like we're comparing people and we think one way is the best way, because we actually do not feel that way at all. There's your transition plan. You will get this back after spring break, and you will be able to consult it to help you with this articulation piece of post-graduation, if necessary. So we talked about ourselves, we showed our piece of evidence and talked about what we're proud of. We're talking about our post-graduation goals in the first year after high school and what next year is going to hopefully look like. And then we're going to talk about our capstone. So this is the biggest part of your presentation, talking about and synthesizing the capstone journey. It is really important that you explain the original question. So way back when you first decided to do this, what was that original question? And we did talk about that and how some things changed in this room. Don't ignore the fact that you set a certain goal. Talk about that. Talk about why you chose it in the first place. What was your rationale for that? And then talk about if it got modified. And if it did get modified, why did it get modified? What was the rationale behind modifying it? What did you learn and what did you need to change because of that? Then talk about that and give us the details of what you did. What were the actions that you took to be able to achieve what you achieved or learn what you learned? Again, this is not about us saying, oh wow, your capstone goal was weak or your capstone goal was really strong. It's about us saying, how did you set that goal? Can you articulate the pathway you took to get there? What was successful? What was challenging? How did you deal with it? And what did you learn? So as long as you learned something from whatever you did, that is the important part. What are the significant experiences, events, and developments that occurred? And show where you started, show that process. And I'm emphasizing the word show because we really want to see the documentation. So hopefully you've been keeping the journals or the pictures or the videos or the charts or whatever it is that you have needed to keep track of what you're doing. And you can show us where you began, what happened in the middle, and what happened in the end. That's about accessing the documentation to show proof. Okay, and then it's the reflection piece. And this is where I want you to spend the most time, to stop, sit, and think, and talk with your friends about this, and talk with your mentor about this. What did you learn or accomplish? So maybe you didn't reach your ultimate goal. That doesn't mean you failed. But what did you learn about that process? Did you learn that, okay, I see that I have to dedicate myself more. I see that I have to improve my time management. I see that when I set goals, I need to base them more in reality or look at my circumstances and what's coming up for me to be able to set that goal appropriately. What were the challenges? How did you overcome those challenges? Or how did you try to overcome those challenges? Or now knowing what you know, what would you do to better overcome those challenges, right? Like it's all depends on where you are at and what you've learned, okay? So don't just think about what you learned about the topic itself. So if your topic was learning to play an instrument, don't just think about what you learned in terms of how you can play the instrument now. Think about what you learned about goal setting. What did you learn about yourself personally and that whole process? That's part of the reflection piece. Then you're also thinking about how are you a lifelong learner? And I'll give you the definition of lifelong learning in a second. Well, in a bit. And then also, what have you learned about goal setting, time management, and grit? You guys have heard of grit, right? What is grit? I'm going to review a little bit of what it means to have grit, because to be successful in meeting and reaching your goals, you've got to have grit, especially in years like grade 12 when things are really busy and you have tests, exams, assignments, projects, university and college applications, you have jobs, you have life, you have friend problems, you have sports, everything. It's busy. So how do you show grit for the things that you really want for yourself? So grit is a good acronym, G-R-I-T, for what you need to be successful. So G stands for guts. Do you feel like you have guts? The ability to take a risk. That when you know you want something, but it's risky to get there, you can take just enough of that risk to be able to take a leap of faith and get there. Or do you shy away from that and go, this doesn't feel easy, so I'm not going to do it? How much guts do you have? The R stands for resilience. When you do try something and you do take a risk and you hit a wall, do you slide down from that wall and creep away and never approach it again? Or do you get back up and see if you can punch your way through that wall? Or do you try to go around the wall or climb over the wall? Or that's resilience. Resilience is your ability to hit a challenge and then not to give up because you've hit that challenge, but to get up and try again. Here's a kid who's resilient. He's at a spelling bee And they've just asked him to spell a difficult word, and this is what happens to him.
Avocoid.
Dr. Clark. Sorry.
Alopeed. Alopecoid.
That is correct.
On a stage, gets right back up again, walks to the microphone and spells the hardest word in the spelling bee correctly.
Did you win?
I believe he won the spelling bee. That's a small example of resilience. But when you really think about that, if that happened to one of us, what would it have been like? Like most people might have passed out and then felt like they failed, and now I'm not going to win the spelling bee. It's all over from here. I'm going to walk away and get off the stage and whatever. Got right back up. He spelled that word and he moved on. If he spelled it wrong, he would have been excused.
He probably thought of that.
Yeah. They wouldn't have let him stay in it, but you're right. There definitely was an excuse there. I in GRIT stands for intention, and the intention is the end result. You know when they say keep your eye on the prize? Are you able to keep your eye on the prize when all these other things are happening and taking your attention? Is that prize always there? Or as these things take your attention, does this kind of go to the back burner, and then when it gets revisited, you look at it and you go, I set this goal? Oh, I'm not really that excited about this goal anymore. So that's what tends to happen, and I think that's what's happened to a lot of people in this capstone process. Because all of the busyness and the other things come into play, you lose sight of why you chose that goal in the first place. So your job is to reconnect with that. To reconnect with the intention of why. Why did you want to do this? What were you hoping to get out of it? And once you've reconnected with that, you will re-excite yourself to be able to achieve what it is you wanted to achieve. So intention in life is important. Always know and be clear about what your intentions are, and then don't lose sight of that. That's going to drive you through. The last one is T for tenacity. You've got to be tenacious. It means don't wait for whatever it is you need to fall on your lap. Don't expect everybody else to bring it to you or for it to just happen. You need to be tenacious. You need to go out and you need to get what you want and do what you need to do to be able to achieve your goals. That is grit. This is a video you can watch if you want to look at this PowerPoint. I urge you to go home after, and when I put it up, you can review the PowerPoint. You can look through the videos just to reconnect and sit. Because I know when people talk to me about things, I don't really process them properly. I have to go home afterwards and then re-look at it, and then I process what it is I need to do better. So I urge you to do that. So did you demonstrate grit through your project? How, if you feel like you weren't gritty or gritty enough, how can you develop more grit? Because the good news is if you don't feel like you've got grit, you can develop grit. Grit is something that we can work on and get more of. So how can you build more grit? In your final, so that's the reflection piece. The final representation piece of your capstone ultimately is going to demonstrate what you've learned in that topic of your capstone, right? And the topic of what you chose to do. So how you do that is completely up to you. A booklet, a diorama, it could be a video, a top 10 list, who knows. I'm going to give you some examples based on what you decided to do for your capstone. I've got 4 different types, and I'll tell you some examples of what you could do for your representation if you don't already. Or do you guys already have a bit of an idea for what you want to do? Yeah? Yeah, if you're creating something, it's pretty clear, right? You know that you're going to show your creation. Okay, so if you wanted to learn a new skill, so who is that? Who was trying to learn a new skill, kind of? Yeah. So if you wanted to learn a new skill, your job is to demonstrate what your skill level is now. You're going to have to show us what your skill level was to begin with and how it progressed, and then what your skill level is now. But your final representation is, this is what my skill is now. So for example, you might, if you were trying to learn a language, you might want to demonstrate what you've learned. You can do this in a variety of ways. You could show a video of you having a conversation. You could speak the language for us, a prepared speech maybe, or you could play an audio recording or show a video in your case, or create a short video of you using that language in some kind of fictitious or real environment. Maybe you're speaking with somebody, or you've created a script and you're practicing that. So show us. So here's a girl who wanted to learn Korean, and she took 6 months to learn Korean as much as she could. How much do you think she could accomplish in 6 months? And she was in grade 12 too. This is not my student, but this is somebody else from the internet, but she was in grade 12. This is how much she learned in 6 months.
안녕하세요. 알블러 KBT 안젤라입니다. 요즘에 많은 구독자님들께서 제가 한국어로 말하는 영상을 보고 싶어 하셔서 이제 한국어로 영상을 찍을 거예요. 그런데
Okay, so just imagine this is her showing her skill level. Now, I'm not trying to freak you out. She spent 6 months to learn this, but she almost failed grade 12 because she spent so much time learning this. Like, she spent like 600 hours focused on this. Her mom was like, "Are you learning Korean again?" She was like all day, all night. Yours is a 10 to 15 hour requirement, so I don't expect this much skill to come out of you. But it's a demonstration of she's speaking in this video and showing you what she now knows. That's what I want to kind of see from you guys, or live, right? Just do it right there. How many of you wanted to create something new, right? Lots of creation type things. So if you wanted to create something, it's pretty simple. You're going to show us your creation. So if it was an art piece, you're going to show us the final art piece. If it was the video, you're going to show us the final video. Maybe it was the animation, game design, coding sequence, fashion line, whatever it might be. There you go. The meals that you cooked, whatever it might be, you're going to show us that. That's your final piece. So here's somebody who created a little animation. It's quite amazing how much emotion you could actually convey in a round ball with just a square eyeball and an eyebrow. Like, it's pretty amazing. Oh boy, I don't know. Oh my goodness, that is not real. I don't think that's real. Okay, so more examples. How many of you in here kind of wanted to improve your knowledge or understanding of something, right? So if you're improving your knowledge or understanding of something, your job is to demonstrate what you now know. How do you demonstrate that? Lots of different ways you could do that. Here are some examples. Show us your research first of all. We want to know where you got this information from. But the final representation could be a collage of what you know. It could be a slideshow. It could be a spoken word highlighting the aspects of what you've learned. It could be a series of the vlog interviews and reflections strung together that you can show what the development of what you learned was. Be creative. That's the key for your representation, is to try to be creative. And when we are creative, we actually ingrain what we're doing into our psyche more, and it makes more sense and is more meaningful to us. So this is somebody who wanted to learn about family heritage, and they put together a slideshow of historical pictures from their family. I won't show you that. So this one is if you have a goal to better yourself somehow. So you want to get better at something, or you want to do something that's better for you. Basically, your job is to show us how you did that. What strategies did you use, and how did they work? So this is very personal, so we want the personal reflection piece on it. What did you try, and what did you learn? So for example, you could show us your research about, for example, some people were doing time management. What did you do to get better, and how did that work? You could do a top 10 list of strategies and give us feedback on each. You could do before and after picture series. You could do a spoken word again, or create the vlog interviews, or you could write a short story. This is about the little girl who wanted to eat healthy, and this is how she did it. And this is what we're, so make it a little bit creative as you're doing that. So 10 tips for healthy eating that I learned, or before and after healthy eating effects. Here's 101 ways to show what you know. So if you're like, I don't feel creative, I don't really know what to do, you could just take a look at this. I joked and I said you can close your eyes and you can point and be like, I'm going to do a rap, whatever it might be. Lots of options and ideas for how you could be creative in your representation. So this is available on the Moscrop website, also on this PowerPoint there. So that's what you're going to talk about. Okay, so it is listed in the outline and in extreme detail on the detailed list of what to say, how to prepare, what kinds of questions you can think about answering. These are some videos from other areas like the United States and whatever, and some different kinds of capstone projects, but when you hear other people talking about what they've done, it kind of inspires you to help you think about how you're going to talk about it. So you can watch these videos for some inspiration. And I did mention that I would come back to the idea of lifelong learning. This is the definition of lifelong learning, so read that. And the key words in this are ongoing, never stops, voluntary, and self-motivated. Nobody has to tell you to do this. You know you need to learn something, or you know you need to be able to do something, or want to be able to do something, and you go out and you pursue that yourself. Your ability to do that in life is going to be one of the #1 predictors of your success, especially in this rapidly changing world. You've got to be able to keep up and develop yourself. I'm not going to go, for example, those of you out there who want to be game designers. If you want to be a game designer, you've got work to do and you need to start now. You need to be learning coding languages. You need to be keeping up with changes. You need to be learning new popular languages as they come out, and they will change. And as a game designer, you're constantly doing that. And if you're not, you're falling behind. Stay ahead of the game. That's what lifelong learning is. And it's also personal growth, right? Fulfilling personal need and personal growth and what you want. So you can read through all these things. I won't go through all of that, but you know, reflecting on being a lifelong learner in your capstone is one of the things that we're looking for as well. And it's important in all the areas in your life. So again, what are you going to physically bring to your presentation? A few things to hand in. Your resume. Your action log. And your mentor guide. How many meetings do you have to have with your mentor? 3. Yeah, so if you haven't had your 3rd meeting yet, make sure you do that and talk to them about this stuff. Get ideas from them about how to represent your learning, or how to even think about your learning and what happened. They can help you with that as well. Your resume expectations include an error-free, updated resume. I will tell you, this is me marking your resumes. Blah! Usually not smiling, but I spend meticulous time and countless hours that my children barely know who I am anymore because, Mom, you're marking resumes again? Yes, I'm marking resumes again. I give lots of feedback because this is a really important document that I want to make sure that you perfect before you leave here. If you think about it, a resume is a single piece of paper that somebody's going to read that is going to have to make them say, I want to meet this person. And if your resume doesn't do that, that's a problem. But that's a lot of work. That's a lot of pressure on one piece of paper. So it's got to be good. And your resume might get you an entry-level job wherever, having a spelling mistake or having things out of order. But once you want to get past that, it's not gonna fly. So I really want to make sure they're good. So what I'm asking you to do is, when you get your resume back after spring break, sit down with it at your computer and please make sure that you use the edits, make the changes, and go carefully through it. You'll see lots of circles and lines and all these kinds of things happening. So if anything is confusing, you can come back and see me to explain. But please try to incorporate the things to make your resume better. All right? And you're going to bring that one. So that's everything. Just to recap, we are looking at presentation skills. So your oral presentation abilities, and these are some of the things. So time management is important. Know that note cards can be used, but these are not read off of. You're still talking to your audience. You do need to have good eye contact with your audience. So you notice when I'm talking to you guys, I'm trying to scan and get eye contact from all of you the whole time. That helps with engagement. Be appropriately animated. So if you're really stiff and standing at the front of the room, it might not be as interesting for people to sustain their interest in that, okay? So you can move around. Speak in a clear, audible voice. Use good language skills and pronunciation. Communicate information clearly and speak in a poised manner. So if you're feeling really nervous, I suggest you fiddle with a few things. Take 3 deep breaths and calm your body down so that you're not speaking too quickly, okay? Ultimately, this is an opportunity for you to really be proud of yourself. This is your opportunity to share with other people how truly fantastic and unique you are and all of the special things that you have done. And really be proud of yourself, because we don't let ourselves do that very often. We're pretty negative by nature, aren't we? We like to point out what we're not good at all of the time. But I'm forcing you to think about the things that you are proud of and to really reflect on your growth and celebrate. And on that note, we talk about what to wear. What kind of clothes are you going to wear on that day? It is a business casual dress code. How many of you know what that means? Okay, kind of story. So in business casual, so we're talking no jeans or runners, open-toed shoes or extremely high heels, nothing that you're going to be uncomfortable in. Sweatpants or hoodies, these things are kind of not. But yes to things like dress pants and skirts, collared shirts, suits, ties, sweaters, cardigans, blouses, dress shoes. Now I'm going to show you the difference between business casual and business professional. There you go. So our dress code is a business casual dress code. So the minimum is dress pant and blouse or collared shirt. Gentlemen, you don't have to wear a tie. If you don't own a tie, that's okay. That's still business casual. Lots of people come in a business professional wear, and that's okay too. So if you want to wear your full suit and tie, that is appropriate. So ladies, if we look at what that means, so I'm wearing a pair of dress pants today, I'm wearing a blouse, and I'm wearing a cardigan over my blouse. I'm not wearing proper shoes, and that's because I'm old and I have a bad back, and I wore shoes yesterday that were dress shoes, and now I'm sore. So, but having said that, this is not a requirement for you to go out and buy something new. So if you do not own these kinds of things, it's not about having to spend money to acquire it. I would suggest, first of all, trying to borrow from family members or other people what you can. And then secondly, doing the best you can. So if you have put in an effort to be as business casual as you possibly can, we can see that. So if you're wearing your dress pants and your collared shirt, but all you have is your nicest pair of sneakers, so be it. We know you've done the best you can, right? That's okay. Does that make sense? So I can give you a general professional requirement, and I will talk about skirts as well, but really you want to be able to sit down comfortably and move around comfortably and not feel like you're uncomfortable or you're going to expose yourself accidentally. And typically if you put 3 fingers above your knee like this, that's a good length. Yeah, and anything above that might be too short. And pants wise, these are all acceptable types of pants, and I will talk about skirt length as well. And this could raise a lot of feminist emotions, and I am a feminist at heart too, and I know the history of the dress code in the workplace, and that can be a controversial issue, but the standard is that in professional wear, it comes down to how do you want to present yourself in a professional environment. And yeah, your dress is important. She looks great. I would say she looks great, but we can professionalize her look a little bit more by lengthening the skirt. And it's not about being funky and fashionable, it's about being professional. So those are some suggestions of how to change things. Color is fine, color is great in a professional workplace. You don't have to be like me, I'm just black and gray today. But you don't want your outfits to take over you. You want people to listen to you and look at you rather than your clothing. Unless clothing is something that you're making a statement on. Again, for gentlemen as well, obviously you're not going to be wearing hats or tank tops. You're going to want to professionalize your look, just the same. All right, here are some examples of people from the past. So you can look at this and you can see different kinds of outfits that people have worn in the past. Everything from full-on suits and ties to dress pants and shirts, and ladies with blouses and skirts and pants and all kinds of things. So there's some examples of things worn in the past. And brings me to this slide. Any questions about clothing? Okay. So your presentation is based on a pass or fail, but you are being given feedback. The most important part of this is where do I fall and what do I need to do to get better, right? This is all about improvement and you being able to be more confident in your oral presentation skills. I already told you, no one's gonna fail. It's pretty much guaranteed unless you don't show up or you show up with nothing to say. Again, this is the rubric. That's where we want to get to. If you want to look in detail at what we're looking at professional appearance and voice. We're looking at the delivery of your presentation. So is it engaging? What kind of communication skills are you using? The creativity. So how creative are you in the presentation, in the methods, and in the visual aids? Personal and post-graduation goals, not are you going to be a rocket scientist going to the best university in the world, but can you articulate what you are doing? Have you researched that? And do you have a rationale for why that makes sense to you? The capstone project, journey and documentation, not was your capstone big enough or did you reach your goal, but what did you do? How did you do it? Showing us, notice how this is big letters, showing us the documentation and proof of what you did and how you did it. And then the reflection on all of it. So that's kind of what we're looking at in that process. Let's talk about mentors for a little bit. So you all have a mentor that maybe you've done a really good job of accessing, or maybe you haven't really been sure of how to access them properly or well. Regardless of what you've done, you need to have your third meeting with them. Get them to help you synthesize your learning and work out what you're doing for your presentation. And lastly, please remember to say thank you. How are you going to thank your mentor? Whether you have used them to their full ability or not, they have agreed to be your mentor, and you need to thank them for that. And at least it's a handwritten note or a card that says so much. Thank you very much for whatever they've done for you and however you feel about that, okay? So don't forget this thanking piece. Okay. You have two roles. You are a presenter, and then you are an audience member. Or maybe you're an audience member before you're a presenter. So I do have to talk about the importance of your behavior as an audience member and really being conscious of being the best audience member you can be. And that means showing respect at all times for all presentations and all people. So it means that your cell phone is on silent and absolutely put away. No cell phones on the desks. Earbuds are completely removed and not visible at all. We know that sometimes people hang them over their ears, or you've got these bud things that don't even have a string attached to them. Whatever these things are called.
Wireless?
Thank you.
There you go.
Wireless. Listen, I come from the day of twirly telephones, okay? With the, anyhow, we used to like try to get from one room to the other, and I'd be like, Mom, pull the cord. This is how we had to talk to our friends in secret in the corner because we couldn't go anywhere else. Anyhow, yes, you've got these things, and I don't want to see them. They obviously should be put away safely and not out at all. Showing ultimate respect, and I do, the way you sit is important. So yes, I know I talk a lot and you might be dragging down and hanging on your desk, and I've seen it all. As a teacher, you see people who can sleep upright in the middle of class. You see people who just drop their head onto the table and that's how they sleep. You see people who are just slouched right under the table. You see people trying to play their game on their phones and hair over the plug so that nobody can see they're listening to music when they look like they're listening to you. None of that's gonna happen. So the way you sit when people are presenting is important. Sitting up straight and giving them your eye contact as they're presenting is really helpful. And also smiling. You'll see when you're up there, it really helps to have people in the audience who look happy to be there and are smiling at you back, and it's comforting and helpful. So you give that, they'll give that back to you, and it'll be a great environment. And applause can be rejuvenating and great, or applause could be awkward and sad. So if you were to applaud What would a good, solid applause sound like? Show me right now. Pretty good. Hey, you guys were pretty good for the first off. Like some groups needed a little bit of work. But you notice that the speed of clapping and how loud you're clapping is important. It's not sort of like a quiet knee slap or a quiet clap. What would an awkward applause sound like? Right? Don't do that. Okay? So your loud, enthusiastic applause without the hooting and howling or table slapping obviously is going to be important and rejuvenating. All right, and then there's this 2 stars and a wish feedback form. So on this form, everybody that is witnessing the presentations will have an opportunity to fill one of these out for you. And so what it is 2 compliments and 1 constructive criticism piece that you would like to give the presenter. So you can fill this out for those guys will fill it out for you. Last year, this was the most exciting piece for the grade 12s. They were really super excited to get those back and to be able to read that written feedback from people, because it's really good formative feedback. Some examples of things you might want to compliment them on: great eye contact, you were really confident, loud projected voice, I really enjoyed the visuals in your presentation. Maybe you want to compliment them on great job on your capstone, you look like you worked really hard, a good job reflecting on your learning, anything like that. And maybe the constructive criticism might be something like, you seemed a little bit nervous, next time maybe slow your speech down. I wish you talked more about that topic, I wanted to hear more about it. Or, could be anything like that. One form of constructive piece of feedback that can help them the next time that they are doing something like this. And that's will be stapled together with your evaluation and handed back to you a week or so after the presentation. Okay, so that's everything. No, this is everything. Okay, this will be handed out again in April when I come back to your English classes. But for now, what do? You've got to arrange to be here. You've got to choose what kind of presentation style you're going to want to do, and remember the creative piece. You're going to gather the documentation examples. So gather all the things that you might have collected, the journals, maybe it's the pictures, the videos, the resources, whatever it might be. And you've got to curate exactly which pieces of those things you're going to highlight in your presentation. You can bring the entire thing just to show, like, I've got this, but you want to highlight only certain pieces. Complete the final action steps. If you've got a little bit more to do for your capstone, make sure that you work on that and do that as much as you can. Really show that grit, as much grit as you can show in the next few weeks. Create and perfect your representation, so the final piece. Plan what you're going to say and how to be creative about it, and do a lot of reflection. All right, the Moscrop website will have this. We'll have clothing examples. We'll have evidence examples, which you missed that whole piece, so you might want to check that out, etc. There is a tech needs survey, so at the top of the detailed list, as well as in the middle of this one. So in this one, down where it says presentation must include, you might want to highlight or star that URL, which is tinyurl.com capstone tech 2019. So it's like a 5-question survey that's going to give me your updated goal statement. So all grade 12s have to fill this out before April the 11th. I want to know what your goal statement is right before the presentations, like right now. So how has it changed? What is it right now? I'm going to share that with the teachers in the classroom so that they know what people are presenting about, to give them a bit of a head start on it, I guess you can call it. And then it also is going to tell me what kind of tech needs you need. So don't fill this out right now because you don't know yet what you're doing. But once you've figured it out, fill this out. Tell me, Mrs. Dado, I need really good sound because I want to be able to show some music that I played in blah, blah, blah. Or I need to be able to use a Mac computer, so I have to have a Mac compatible in-focus projector. Or whatever tech needs you might actually need. All classrooms will have an in-focus projector. I'll make sure that they have that. But maybe you want to play a guitar. So you need a special room to be able to play the guitar live for people, or an instrument, or sing, or do a dance performance, or whatever it might be. We've had all of them. Last year we had Maria, who was doing the school garden, and she needed to be close to the school garden because she took everybody out to the school garden to physically show them the garden. So I made sure that I put her there. So I take that information and I determine where in the school I will put you. Okay? I mentioned I'm going to come back into English 12 20 minutes I'll spend. I'll answer any of your questions on those days. It's the week before, so you might have a lot more questions at that time and haven't really thought about it a little bit. There's me again. All right, come see me if you have any questions.